looking for strength. Been looking for someone I can always call my friend. I guess I've been looking for you. Oh, I guess I've been looking for you. I've been looking for peace. Been looking for love. Been looking for a rock that I can always lean on. Guess I've been looking for you. Guess I've been looking for oh, I was for so long. I wonder. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Saturday morning, and I'm so glad you have joined me. This is our Watch the Flags Relationship and Dating Book Club. I'm so glad you are here. Make sure that as you're coming on that you give me the opportunity to know where you're joining us from. Make sure you let me know in the comments where you are joining us from this morning. Good morning, Miss Sherry Oliver. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome, everybody. Make sure you hit the share button and invite somebody on with us this morning as we're going to be talking about relational red flags today and how we relate to one another as we're getting to know people on these dating scenes. So super excited this morning to have you join us. Make sure you hit the share button and invite some other people on with us. This is going to be a great conversation this morning. And as we're going to get started in a few moments, we just want you to let us know where you're joining us from. Make sure if this is your first time joining that you are giving StreamYard permission to see your comments at the top of the post. Again, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We are happy that you are here with us. We're looking to have a great time today as we have this discussion about relationship red flags. Again, the book we're covering is called Watch the Flags by Dr. Conway Edwards. It's available on all the various places that sell books. And in addition to that, it's available at his church, One Community Church website as well. So thank you all so very much for joining this morning. And we are going to get started in just 1 second. All right. So for those of you that are just joining, welcome to our Saturday morning Watch the Flags book club. We are covering this book called Watch the Flags, Discernment in Relationship Signs and Dating by Dr. Conway Edwards currently. And we have about 2 or 3 more weeks, I think. We'll be on this on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. So good morning, Sheila Harris. Thank you so much for joining. Good morning, ladies. How are you all? Thank you so much for joining. We are so glad that you are on. Welcome, everybody. Make sure you let us know where you're joining us from this morning. A couple of things, our book club logistics and rules. We are meeting here on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. And this is also live on YouTube. If you prefer to watch it on YouTube or to go back and see it later in the week, you can go to Queen Cassandra Haynes YouTube channel and it'll be posted there. So we are posting all our episodes there so that it can be cataloged and you can always go back and watch it later on. Also, no negativity or rude comments are allowed over here in our book club. You will be invited to the block party if so, but we don't. We have a good time over here on Saturday mornings. So why am I doing this? I am doing this to try to help enlighten some of us who are out here on the dating streets after going through divorce or whatever the situation may be. Also want to share some personal experiences that I've had in hopes that other people will not go through the same thing I've been through. So again, we're doing it for free. It's just a way to connect with those who are dating, who are more mature in the dating game and are looking for some advice and some things that we want to make sure that we are not being taken advantage of and that we understand how the dating game goes now. So that's why I'm doing it. So the last few weeks, we've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about the pitfalls of dating start with you, how to avoid self-inflicted damage. We talked about dating requires maturity, making sure that you know why you're making the choices you're making when it comes to dating. We talked about dating requires knowledge. We also talked about dating requires responsibility. So some of the things in the past few episodes that we've talked about concerning responsibility. We also talked about some characteristics you should be looking for and those that you see as potentials for dating, and kind of what you should be looking to glean from those individuals who you're trying to get to know. And then last week, in episode 3, we talked about making sure that we understand what our expectations are and that we're able to relate what our expectations are, that we communicate those things early in the dating situation so that you don't have hurt feelings and disappointments because you never told the person what you expect. So we are, that was all last week. We talk about mutation, which means that we are changing ourselves to try to be what someone else wants us to be instead of giving them the opportunity to really know us for who we are. So we talked about mutation is artificial and awkward, and that you should be allowing the person to authentically getting to know who you are, and giving them the opportunity, giving them the chance to really appreciate the genuine person that you are versus trying to become what you think they want you to be, and behaving in that way. And it's very dissatisfying, and it causes you to not be happy in a relationship. So last week we talked all about that. I challenged you that your challenge for the week would be to read the section of the book that's called The Interlude, that was talking about the different buckets in your life and how to know if those buckets have been filled, and determine which areas of your life you need help with. So that was the challenge that we ended with last week, as we were talking about. Good morning. Hey, Sabrina. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome, ladies. So now we are going to move on to episode number 4. And this week we're talking about relational flags. And this week we're going to go into a little bit more discussion about those areas in your life, which he refers to in the book as buckets, and how to know if those things from the past have been addressed and all of that. So we have a lot of content we're going to cover in a short amount of time today, but I hope that it is a blessing to you. Good morning, Miss Angela Harris. Thank you so much for joining. Good morning. So the goal of the relationship section of the book is talking about the relational flags, and keeping in mind that the goal should be to connect deeply with someone without having to fight the noise of unspoken hurts or misplaced wants. So when you think about, okay, I want to date, I want someone in my life, I desire to be with someone, the person should be able to get to know you and to be able to connect with you in a way that they don't have to fight against the unspoken hurts that you've already had in your life. Come on, somebody. And they don't want to have to fight against the things that you want that are being put on them that they don't even know about. So this week, we're going to talk about how to connect in a way that people are not being forced to deal with the unspoken hurts that you're burying in your life, and the misplaced wants or the things that you desire that you are attempting to have other people feel for you that really need to be filled inwardly with yourself. Hey, Auntie Vicky, thank you so much for joining. Good morning. Thank you all for coming on. So this is week number 4, and today we're talking about the relational flags. And so this is going to be good today. He starts off in this chapter talking about unaddressed issues from childhood will plague your relationships in adulthood. So the interlude, which is the section of the book that was before this particular chapter, took us through some of the things he calls buckets that need to be filled in your life as a child. And he's helping you to identify whether or not those things were addressed, and if you have buckets in your life that are not filled. And one of them, he talks about the value bucket. There's things like the vulnerable bucket. There are things called the imperfect bucket, where you have to, are you one of those individuals that feel like you have to do everything just right or else it doesn't work for you? Or do you have issues being vulnerable? You've always got to have the strong front up. You don't know how to show vulnerability. The dependent bucket, which means you can live comfortably and you have a healthy reliance on others. But if you didn't get that bucket filled, you may be a very codependent person that feels like they can't move and do things on their own, independent. The spontaneous and the open bucket, which means that you can handle changes. Some of us maybe didn't have that spontaneous bucket feel in our childhood, and it's very hard for us to deal with change. And when things come about and we have to shift gears, we have a hard time doing that. And he's talking about, adding to someone's bucket does not take away from your own, but there should not be an expectation in relationships where you're dependent on someone else to fill those buckets for you, because those are things that should have been developed as a child. But if they weren't, we're going to get into today what you should do. So it starts off with talking about unaddressed issues and these buckets in our lives. If we don't address things that happen to us in childhood, it will plague our relationships in adulthood, which basically means the things that I dealt with as a child. Some people went through, situations where they did not see parents, or maybe they didn't have but one parent in the home, and they never saw affection, appropriate affection. They never saw the touching and the feeling and the hugs and things of that nature. And so they grow up feeling that as long as I'm providing, as long as I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, I'm at home when I need to be home, then that tells the person that I love them. And so they never really, that vulnerability bucket never was developed in their life as a child. So they move that into adulthood, and you go into relationships and the person is asking, hey, why don't you ever tell me you love me? Why don't you give me a hug? Do you like public displays of affection? Can you hold my hand? And it feels very uncomfortable. Well, guess what? That's because that affection and that vulnerability bucket in your life was not filled as a child. So these are principles in this book that's talking about those buckets are very important when you think about the dating world and getting to know someone and finding a suitable mate for yourself. If you did not have those buckets filled as a child, then that's going to translate into how you handle relationships with other people. So you go and you expect them, they want to be affectionate, it's uncomfortable for you, and then you decide that's too much work. What's wrong with you? Why you always want me to hold your hand? When truth of the matter is that's healthy public displays of affection that is appropriate for adults that are dating, but because you never had that in your childhood, it is plaguing you now in your adulthood. That's just one example of how those things from our childhood translate to issues in adulthood. Good morning. So thank you all for joining. Welcome everybody that's jumping on. So as we get into this, he's talking about relationships magnify that there is something missing or broken within us. Oh my goodness. So again, as you get into relationships, you start dating, you start seeing why is this always turning out this way? Or why do I end up always feeling the same way? You need to start reflecting, because remember, we talked about in the earlier episodes that dating starts with you. And so if there are things in your in your life, in your heart, in your inner man that you have not addressed, then those may be the things that continue to be magnified in relationships. So if some of us are in the cycle, we continue to get hurt. We continue to experience people taking advantage of us, all kinds of things, but it starts with us. So in this episode this week, that's what we're going to deal with. We're talking about how to relate, and knowing that relating to people, being in relationship, means that it's a reflection not only of the other person, but also of me. All right. So relationships magnify things that are missing or broken within us. So when you're getting into dating, you got to be willing to deal with problems. Some of us have this thing about, I'm not dealing with drama. Well, some of the things we've characterized as drama is really the other person reflecting things that are within us. And this is a very neat principle that he talks in the book, is that I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but that, some of the things you encounter in dating, don't brush it off and be like, I'm writing this person off because I'm not dealing with that. Because truth of the matter is, it may be something that you have not dealt with that's being reflected back to you. In relationships, we have a tendency to feed off each other's energy. So when you're in relationship, and some of the things we categorize as drama is really reflection back to us of what we're giving off. So we're going to talk about some of that today. Don't make excuses. Don't justify your behavior by claiming you didn't get what you needed as a child. What is your plan to get what you need to fix the empty spaces? So I remember there was a person at one point in my life that when I would point out some things that were not pleasing or that seemed to be, issues in our relationship, the person would always say, well, I didn't have my daddy die early. I didn't have my daddy to show me how to be a man. I didn't have, this. And they would always take it back to their childhood. And I was like, why are you using that as an excuse? I don't understand why that is your go-to every time I'm bringing up an issue or a character flaw that's impacting me in this relationship. And it was because that person decided a long time ago in their life that was going to be their go-to for the reason when they were called on the carpet about their behavior is that, well, my dad wasn't there for me and I don't, I'm that's just the way I am. But when you're choosing to be in relationship, remember we talked about if you are selfish, you don't need to be in a relationship because relationships require selflessness and not selfishness. So if you are selfish and you only think about you and that's the way I am and I'm not changing for nobody, then guess what? You're not in the right mind frame to be dating. We're not. You have to think about the other person when you're thinking about relationships. And truth of the matter is that in these times, we've got to be thinking about our own behavior in this dating relationship. It's so easy to look at the other person, but honestly, this always starts with us. So don't make excuses. Don't justify your behavior by claiming, well, I didn't get it as a child. You're an adult now. So what is your plan? What have you thought about the things that I'm missing in my adulthood? What am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? I am known for saying that Jesus in therapy can heal anything. I believe that. I believe that the power of God is undeniable and he can instantaneously heal some things in your life. But I also believe that if you take time and you go through therapy, talk to somebody neutral that doesn't know anything about you, didn't know your family, and you're never going to hear it again, get those things off your chest and allow someone who can be objective about what you've experienced in your life to give you some advice. You've got to come up with a plan. So yes, maybe you didn't have your dad. Maybe your mom didn't show you love. Yes, maybe you never were told that I love you, so you're uncomfortable with communicating your affection. Yes, maybe I was always raised by someone who had a regimen and a schedule, so I have a hard time stepping outside the box, being spontaneous. Come up with a plan to say, okay, when I'm faced with those things, I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to blame my childhood, but here's how I'm going to address my lack of affection, or here how I'm going to address my OCD and everything having to be perfect. Everybody's not going to live that way. So I've got to have a way to address that so that I don't end up ruining my relationships because of things in my life that I didn't get as a child. So as you think about this today, I want you to think about, am I making excuses? Am I always going to, that's just how it is. My daddy did this. My mama did this. My grandmama had to raise me. My parents abandoned me. Are those always your excuses? Or as an adult, are you coming up with a plan for how you're going to live this life if you want to be in a productive relationship and get to know someone in dating? Even the relational problems caused by the other person still reflect something about you. Ooh, this was a principle in the book. It took me a minute, no lie, to digest this as I was reading it, because on my personal journey, this has been a problem for me. And why do I always keep running into the same type of people? Why am I in relationships with these same type of people? Like, what is it? And I finally had to say, what is it about me that is drawing these type of people to me, that I am consistently having to be the one to carry most of the responsibility in the relationship, or things that just not making any sense to me? Why am I going through what I'm going through? In the book, he says, the relational problems caused by the other person still reflect something about you. So yes, every person carries their own baggage, but you've got to understand in dating that what you see sometimes is a reflection of something in you. He says that if your exes were all so crazy, your willingness to enter into the relationship with them is telling about you. Listen, so if you're always encountering people that have this certain characteristic and it's not your characteristic, you got to be thinking about in this, what is it in me that I am either attracting these kind of people or I'm being willing to accept these kind of people into my life. And so the principle in the book says that even the X situation. So if you're always encountering situations that are crazy, out of order, things not going well, they're abusive, they don't know how to communicate, then what in you did not screen them out properly and was willing to enter into a relationship with them, even though you might have saw some of these things? So what is it in you that is willing to enter into these relationships? You got to think about it. And so you all know that I'm all about transparency. So this is part of my journey that I'm sharing with you all, as well as reviewing this book. So in this journey, I have had to move from the missionary mindset to the queen mentality. Okay. And let's talk about that. So the missionary mindset was, I have always been a very sensitive, feeling type of person. Even as a little bitty girl, I was one of those kids that my mother always, we talk about when I was little, how I would sit in the living room floor and watch those kids from Africa commercials and those little things, those campaigns they would do on TV where the African children didn't have any food. There was always covered in flies. All those commercials they used to show to get you to donate money to these children in Africa, right? So it was something about me that I always connected, and I wanted to just always, I don't want to eat. You can send them my food. They need it more than me. I mean, little bitty 5-year-old just feeling all of these things for these people that were unfortunate, right? So very early, my family identified that she's a caring person. She's got a big heart. She's going to always want to take care of other people. That has been me since a little child. But the unfortunate part about it is that I did not learn as a child how to have boundaries around that. So that was a bucket in my life that I needed to have filled, was that I was too vulnerable. So my vulnerability bucket was overflowing. I was too vulnerable, and I did not learn proper boundaries around my big, kind, compassionate heart. And so I ended up, as I drifted into relationships, always being attracted and getting into relationships with people who always were very needy people. So they always had issues. They always needed money. They always needed me to bail them out. They were always in distress. So I ended up always attracting those kind of people to me, even though I was very independent, always have been a hard worker, always have my own, from a teenager, I've always had jobs and been able to accomplish a lot of things in my life. But because of that vulnerability bucket being out of balance in my life, I became a missionary, which means I took that kind, comparing heart that God gave me, which should be to do outreach and to help the unfortunate, into relationships. And so instead of looking at relationships as someone who can help build, we can have a life together, we can accomplish things together, we are working and we are mature on the same level and we're in the same mindset, I took the missionary mindset into relationships, and I began to have relationships with people who became projects. So my goal was to help save them, to help get, I felt like I could love them hard enough that they could come up and they could be better people in their life. And truth of the matter is, it was wrong. It was all out of balance. It was a bucket in my life that I did not have, not have boundaries around to help me make the right decisions. So I would attract these people who were very needy, who always needed something. I even got married to them. And in the relationship, I caused myself to do a lot of work. I caused myself a lot of heartache because I wanted a lot more for people than they wanted for themselves. And so what does that do for me? It caused me to be continuously in a cycle of dramatic, bad relationships, because I was looking at it as from the missionary standpoint of how can I help them? I know I can do better. But truth of the matter is, y'all, only God can change people. Hello. Only God can change people. You can't change anybody. It doesn't matter how hard you love them. It doesn't matter how hard you want better for them. It doesn't matter how much you do for them. You can buy, you can do, you can sacrifice, you can put yourself on hold for people. You can do all that in the missionary mindset. But at the end of the day, if they don't want it for themselves, they haven't addressed their own buckets of inadequacies in their life, then what's happening is you are wearing yourself out and you are causing yourself, remember we talked about self-inflicted damage. You are causing yourself self-inflicted damage over and over and over again because you have not addressed that mentality in your life that wants to be the missionary, that wants to be the savior, that wants to be the helper, that wants to, well, guess what? God gave you those characteristics as who you are, but those are for outreach, for those that don't take that into a relationship because it's going to wear you completely out. And I'm telling y'all my personal experience. And so I had to move. I had to make a plan. Remember, we talked about what do you do when you have some things that are missing out of your buckets? What do you do? I had to make a plan. And I started following this man online. His name is Bishop R.C. Blakes Jr. And I was already going to counseling because I was like, something is wrong with this. I am too good of a person to continue to have to go through this. Absolutely. So, and they will frustrate you. They will frustrate you. Yes, Tamika, but you got to be thinking again, what is it in me that keeps attracting these kind of people? And why am I okay with continuing to be in these type of relationships? Yes, Auntie Vicky, absolutely. I was full-fledged in the savior syndrome. And that is, I'm telling you, it is something that you have to make a plan to get out of, because once you get into the savior syndrome, there is something inside of you that gets satisfaction from helping bail people out, but it's very unhealthy in relationships. So take that energy, be a missionary out in the field and do the things God has called you to do for those, for the lost, but you don't need to take that savior syndrome into relationships. I promise you, it will not do you any good. Hey, Paul, thank you all for joining. So as we go, what was my plan? I had to do some research. I had to do some counseling. I had to realize there were some things in me that I was out of balance. And there's nothing wrong with that. As adults, we should always be growing, living, and learning to do better. So I had to understand there were some things in me that needed to be fixed. So I came up with a plan from a spiritual standpoint and also from a practical standpoint in the work, in everyday life. So I went to counseling, who helped me understand that I was the loving person, but that my vulnerability bucket was way out of whack, and that I had to stop with the projects and when it comes to relationships, because I was damaging myself in the midst of that. And then on the spiritual standpoint, I started following R.C. Blakes. He has this series about queenology, and it actually challenged my mindset of who I was and who God had made me to be. This whole thing about queen bling and all of that, all the things that I do, I was using the word queen. God had already implanted that in me, but the real realization of what that means to walk in queendom every day, I had to work on it. So I am so proud. I can finally say, y'all, that I'm proud of myself, that I have done my work and that I am teaching others how to make that shift. Because truly, if you take that vulnerability out of balance into relationships, you will continue in the cycle of self-inflicted damage and continue to do harm to yourself, when the truth of the matter is those things can be fixed and you can come out of that. You don't have to continue to have these bad relationships, to keep choosing the wrong people, to keep attracting the wrong people because you have buckets that are not filled. You've got to make a plan to move from that. So I call moving mine from the missionary mindset to the queen mentality, which means I am a queen. I understand my value. I know what I bring to the table. I realize that I'm a hard worker. I thank God that I don't look like what I've been through, that he has beautified me on the inside and outside, and that I understand that I have a lot to offer the right person in a relationship, and that I deserve a partner in a relationship that brings those things to the table as well. And so I don't have to save anybody. I don't have to look for a project. I am at this point that I am dating people who I have leveled up my standard of what I expect. I'm able to communicate what I I bring, what I expect. I know how to relate to people in a different way. I'm not looking to help fix you. I'm on someone that is already on the journey of doing their work as well. So as you can see, when you have that realization and you change your mindset about who you are and what God has made you to be, then that allows you to have a clear picture of what works for you and what you should be accepting and looking for when it comes to relationships. I can't expect to have a better, fulfilling, loving relationship when I'm continuing to attract projects. It's just not how that works. Let's see what our comments are saying here. Can't play. Yeah, can't play, baby Jesus. Can't play. Yes. So Daryl says you are still so good to everyone around you while navigating your personal challenges. Oh, thank you, Daryl. That's one of my coworkers that I had a long time ago. It's so good. I'm so glad you're on. Thank you for joining. So people that know me know that I have always had I have always dealt with challenges, and some way God has always equipped me to be able to manage through them, still do my hard work that I do on an everyday basis in human resources with people, still manage to do ministry. But in the background, I was hurting myself, continuing to be in these situations with people that were projects without realizing that God truly made me to be a queen, that he has equipped me. I even had an issue saying that at one point. God has made me a queen. You know, I did not want people to feel like I was bragging or that I thought I was more than I was. When the truth of the matter is, it's okay to know who you are. It's okay to say, God has made me a queen. I'm okay with people calling me queen now. I'm okay with people saying, hey, Queen Cassandra. Because it's become a part of who I am because that's who God has made me to be. And I can be confident without being cocky. I can be confident and give my essence to people around me because I understand now who he has made me to be has always been there, but I had to get it in balance and get it in the right perspective so that I can be the best person I can be and be valuable to those around me. But in relationships, I can't take on any more projects. If you don't have yourself together, if you haven't done your work, if you're still making excuses, you're not mature, you don't have your own things going on in your life, then those are not people that are not qualified to date me at this point in my life. And I can say that with confidence, and I'm okay with remaining single until those things manifest in my life that I know I'm worthy of. So those are things that happen though through me doing my work and through me changing my mindset and understanding that it's all up to me to do my work. Amen. Hey, Miss Shermanetta, thank you for joining. It's up to me to do the work. It's up to you to do the work, to move from your previous mindset to your new mindset. It's up to you to do the work. In the book, it says the people you date are not equipped to fill your buckets on their own. It's not even their responsibility. They're not equipped for it. And it's not their responsibility to fulfill those holes that you have in your life. They cannot be expected to fill you up. You know, I've always wondered why people say you complete me. No. In a relationship, you should be complete. You should be willing to do your work to bring your complete healed self into the relationship. Now, are you going to be perfect? No. There's still going to be little things about you you've got to work on. But as far as the core of who you are, you should not be expecting those fundamental things to be filled up by other people. If you're looking at somebody and expecting them to make you happy, that you're not ready. You should be happy. You should be whole. You should be on your journey. You should be realizing who you are, understanding your worth prior to you dating. Because if you're not, you're putting too much pressure on someone else to make those things in your life be fulfilled. When truth of the matter is, I don't owe you that. I'm just getting to know you. Hey, Melissa, I don't owe you that. I'm just getting to know you. I don't owe you that much investment up front. I'm just getting to know you. But we meet people and immediately we are latching on and we're expecting them to make us happy. And if they call us, we're happy. If they don't call us, we're in a mood swing. Those are things, listen, those are personal issues you need to work through. That's putting too much pressure on someone else to fulfill in your life, especially someone new you just met. They don't owe you that much. The red flag in this chapter about relational, how do we relate to people, is called love bombing. And so this was a whole principle that I hadn't even thought about. And I was thinking, like, have I been love? I think I've been love bombed before. It says in the book, the red flag is about love bombing. It says they love bomb you. They flood you with attention, gifts, special experiences, signs of affection, all very early in the relationship. So if you've only known somebody for 3 days and they've already bought you flowers, taking you to a spa, they bought you they've got you a diamond bracelet, you've had 6 meals all in 3 days, that's love bombing. If you met them and in the first week, they have provided special experiences for you that should be things that are developed over time, they are love bombing you in the beginning to reel you in. And this is so interesting, and it happens with men and women. If you meet a woman and she is saying all the right things, doing all the right things, praying for you, interceding for you, in the first 3 days she already got you on her prayer list, she introduced you to her parents. In the first week, there is something wrong. Hello, these are red flags. It's called love bombing, y'all. It says it happens very early in the relationship. It makes you feel, even though you may enjoy it, which we're going to talk about a little bit, but even it feels like you are drinking from a fire hydrant. If you think about a fire hose and how powerful that is, if you meet someone and in the first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they are just so far into you that is overwhelming and it feels like you're drinking from a fire hydrant, red flag. Okay, that means that they are love bombing you, and it is actually a real thing. It says love bombers bomb for a reason. They are hiding their own character flaws. Love bombing is intentional. And some people have been in this cycle for so long that they don't even realize they love bomb people. Like they want to tell you all the great things about yourself from day one. You don't have time to even get to know them because they are so into the flattery and trying to make you feel like you need to get to know, I'm your person. If they are rushing it like that, they are love bombing you. And it is because they don't want you to really know who they are. It says love bombing is intentional and is a giant red flag. It's a huge mask to keep you from spotting the red flags in their life. Okay, so the love bombing is a real thing. It says, so who falls for the love bomb? At some point, we probably all have. It says desperation causes you to be flattered and surprised and overly joyed by the affection and the attention. So yes, if you haven't dated for a while, it may be flattering at first. It may seem, oh my God, they are just enthralled by me. It's love at first sight. They really want to be with me. I can't imagine I never thought someone would do that for me. Guess what? If it's too much, if it feels overwhelming, there's probably some motives behind it and an agenda. So you might want to take a moment and slow it down. Okay, slow it down, ask questions. Remember, we talked about you're playing for keeps if you're really in this for a relationship. So it's okay to slow it down. Say, listen, I appreciate all you're doing. I am flattered by all you're doing, but we're playing for keeps and I want us to get to know each other. I don't want to make the decision to be with you just because of all the great things you're doing for me. I want to know you from the core. Remember, we talked about those pieces of the fruit that you want to know about, and that's who you really, even though flattery and attraction get the relationship started, but it is being maintained by the true intrinsic things that the person maintains inside. So if I'm only basing this off of what you've done for me, then we're going to have a really superficial relationship. So I've got to be able to say, hold on, we need to slow it down. Let me ask questions. The other party may even be desperate, just more than you. The other person might be, if you're desperate and you haven't had anybody and you really want this, the other person may be sharing that same feeling and hoping that you're going to return this overwhelming level of affection back to them with the same energy. And I'm telling you, if somebody is love bombing you and they're expecting that in return, you are going to wear yourself out very early in the game, because most of us can't return it in that same level of energy. And so the person's going to end up getting upset, feeling like you don't want them, feeling like, oh, what, I'm doing all this. What are you putting forth? Eventually, it will become an issue because it was done with the wrong motives too early. So again, slow it down, ask questions, make sure the person is not in desperation and just looking for someone that can fulfill that love bucket and vulnerability bucket in them that they should have gotten filled as a child. And if they haven't addressed it as an adult, then they use love bombing as a way to fulfill that bucket in their life, when truthfully they need to do their work and make sure that they're whole, healed, and well. And then you wouldn't have to use all these superficial things to get the person to like you. They would just like you for who you are. So it says the green flag is that you can talk for hours. So think about the contrast. The red flag is love bombing, and they're doing all these things frantically early in the relationship to get you to like them, versus the green flag being you can simply talk for hours without knowing the time has passed. So look at the contrast between the red flag and the green flag. It says the ability to talk for hours becomes a sign that it's not superficial, whereas the love bombing is all about what I can do for you to make you like me, what I can say to you to flatter you. No real substance. Whereas if you can hold a conversation with that person for hours and it seems like the time goes by and you don't even realize it, then you're getting past the superficial things, getting into things of substance, talking about your goals, your aspirations, and even possible future plans. So that is the difference when we talk about relational flags, is that the superficial love bombing is the red flag, and then the green flag is the ability to truly connect on a deeper level, and it will help you to have a better conversation with that individual. It says things to help develop conversations. So here are some things. If you haven't dated for a while, and you want to say, okay, so how can I have those more meaningful, long conversations? So here's some things to think about. Genuine interest. Do you have some genuine interest, or are you just letting life pass you by? So think about your hobbies, the things you like. If it's people watching, if you're a TV buff, if you like movies, what are your genuine interests? It should be something besides your job. So what are the things in your life, are your genuine interests that you can conversate about? Also, your willingness to share. This is a big one for me. So I had to think about, in my time of dating, being married, now divorced, what are things that I am willing to share? And what things do I think are relevant versus irrelevant in the early stages of getting to know someone? Now, I don't want to bleed on the other person, okay? I don't want to just tell them all the horrendous things that have happened in those relationships, because truth of the matter is I accepted it. I lived through it. I recovered from it, but I allowed those things in my life, right? So as I am and get into new situations or new relationships and getting to know people, dating, which is gathering information, I've got to decide, what am I going to be willing to share? And how much of that is important to someone that's new? Do they need to know all the sleepless nights I had? Do they need to know all the hurt and pain I went through? Do they need to know how I felt about this? So think about it, and put some parameters around the things that you're willing to share. It's not that you have to hide anything, but you don't want to come off as this person that just has all this hurt and pain and never talk about how you've recovered and where you're at now. Because that's really what matters, is how you handled it, where you're at now, and moving forward. We are not allowing our past experiences to dictate to us whether or not we're going to have productive relationships. We are healed. We are moving forward. We are filling our buckets. We are on the journey, and we got to decide how much of that past stuff we're willing to share. Because unfortunately, until you get to know the person well enough to trust them with some of those deep things, you may not need to share them early in the game. Because I had a situation where a person took something that I talked about and used it against me later in an argument. And I was like, the nerve, how you gonna bring that up? But truthfully, I had not known them long enough to be able to trust them with that level of deepness of my past experiences. So you've got to think about how much you're going to share in the beginning, how much of it is even necessary to know. Be honest, but mix up the depth. So don't go into it all deep. Every time I talk to the person, it's always super spiritual. It's always something deep. be able to talk about surface level things like your interest, what you did today, things that you're aspiring to do. Talk about things that you like. And at the same time, there will be time for you to go into the more deep things and the more things that you want to connect with. And as you get to know them, the conversation should go deeper, but you don't want to start off with everything being so heavy and serious all the time. And then the other thing is to limit your cell phone distractions. When you're having conversation with someone, put the phone down. Focus on what you're talking about. Some of us have earbuds. We've got, earplugs where we can be scrolling on the phone and having conversation at the same time. Well, guess what? The other person on the other side, they realize you're distracted. And they may feel offended by, wow, they don't even want to put their phone down enough to have a conversation with me. Definitely, if you're going out to dinner, I would say that you put your phone on do not disturb. Give yourself time, because truly, if the people are in an emergency, they need to be calling 911. Okay. So if you're really playing for keeps and you're really into this relationship for it to be something that's lasting, allow yourself the opportunity to unplug, disconnect for a moment, and give that person your true time and attention. All right. So these are just some conversation starters, some things to think about as you're getting into the dating world. How do you develop deep relationships? How do you develop those conversations? These are some things. Talk about what you're interested in. Think about how, what things you're going to share, what things you're not going to share early in the game. Be honest, mix it up from time to time, and limit the cell phone distractions, because it truly can be disappointing to be talking to somebody and they're focused on something else and not willing to give you their true time and attention. It may seem like effort, yes, and work, because it is. Remember, this is all about getting to the person that you're going to play for keeps with. So it is going to be effort. It's going to be time. But remember, you're playing for keeps, so the effort will pay off and will help you choose wisely from the start. So as you think about, okay, I'm not taking on any projects. I've thought about the buckets in my life. I'm doing the work for me. The goal is for me to get to something that is wise from the start. So I'm going to make a wise choice, and then I'm going to put in the work to develop that relationship. So the challenge for this week is to make a list of conversation topics that you're willing to share as you're dating and getting to know potentials. So think about it. Take some time this week in the challenge and just make a list. Okay, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this. I've got this as an interest. I'm working on this as a hobby. I'm remodeling my house. I'm doing this, and put some effort into things that can be conversations, because sometimes some of us are not chatty catties. So we have to think about and put some effort into what things I'm willing to share in new relationships and conversations as I plan to get to know people, because dating is about gathering data, gathering information. And so I'm going to develop some things, a list of topics that are comfortable things for me to talk about, that I can easily have a good conversation with someone new around and develop. All right. So that's this week. That is the relationship red flags, love bombing versus true conversations that can last for hours. I hope this has been helpful to you and you've enjoyed it. Again, as a reminder, to go to Queen Cassandra Haynes, YouTube channel and subscribe to YouTube, so you can always go back and see this content later. Again, my entrepreneurial side, I do have a jewelry and accessories business called Queen Bling. We are live on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. on Facebook as well. You can follow me on Instagram under Queen Cassandra Haynes. And actually, for those of you who have asked in the past about sowing seeds, there's my Cash App available on the screen if you would like to plant a seed into the things that I am doing from the Queen side. Thank you. So glad. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. So again, thank you everybody for joining. I'm so glad that you were able to be a part this week. We look forward to next week, and we hope that you take some time, develop your challenge list for the week, think about conversations you're willing to share, Don't let it all be deep things, but take time and develop some things that could be interesting conversations as you're on this dating journey. So again, thank you for joining. It's been a pleasure to be on with you all again this Saturday morning. We will be back next week to do week number 5. We are getting close to the end. So again, I hope this has been helpful content to you. My desire is always to help and never hurt. And I hope that as you're on this dating journey, that you have the opportunity to really do this differently. Thank you so much, Miss Vivian. I'm so glad you enjoyed this session. So again, we ask that you would join us again next week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be live again with episode number 5. Have a great and wonderful day, everybody. Bye-bye.